Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. She married for the money, but became her billionaire husband's heroine. Clara Bennett walked down the narrow Brooklyn street in the light September rain, clutching her old coat. Her worn shoes splashed through the puddles, and her mind was tormented by reality, the unpaid rent, the mounting bills, and the nagging feeling that she would never get ahead. She had always dreamed of a different life, but each day seemed to confirm that she was destined for routine and poverty. That evening, urged on by a friend who had given her an invitation to an exclusive charity event, Clara walked through the doors of a vast New York hotel. She immediately felt out of place amidst the designer dresses, sparkling jewelry, and hushed conversations about figures she didn't understand. But there was an aura in the room, a kind of presence that captivated everyone's gaze. It was Richard Langford. Richard wasn't just a billionaire. He was a living legend, respected in the business world, feared for his negotiating skills, admired for his impeccable style and cool charisma. Clara, despite her discomfort, felt a shiver run down her spine when he gave her a brief but intense smile. She knew it was the kind of smile you never forget. The rumor of their impending marriage spread almost instantly. To many, Clara was that naive and ambitious young woman who had hooked a billionaire for his fortune. The whispers, the judgments, the condescending glances, all of it could have broken someone else. But Clara wasn't who they seemed. Beneath her frail appearance lay a quiet determination, a courage that no one in that gilded room would have suspected. As the weeks passed, Clara got to know Richard beyond appearances. Behind the powerful and self-assured man hid a man marked by deep wounds, betrayals, loneliness, and a constant fear that no one would ever truly understand him. Clara saw the fragility behind his mask of strength, and little by little, she became indispensable to his life. She calmed his anger, listened to his doubts, and offered a sincere presence that no one else had been able to provide. Thus, the woman the world saw as a mercenary wife revealed herself to be so much more, a pillar of strength, an unseen support, and ultimately the unexpected heroine of the man everyone thought untouchable. And while the world continued to judge, Clara and Richard began to write a story far deeper than money, a story of trust, courage, and genuine feelings, a story where wealth would never be the greatest power. Clara woke up that morning in her small Brooklyn apartment, the damp breath of the previous day's rain clinging to her hair. The sound of sirens and the smell of wet asphalt were cruel reminders of her ordinary life. Yet today was no ordinary day. Today, she was to meet Richard Langford for a formal lunch, their first real date since they met at the charity gala. She chose her outfit carefully, a simple yet elegant dress, a small, understated handbag, and her hair styled in a perfect bun. She knew every detail mattered, because she was entering a world where the slightest misstep could be judged. Upon arriving at the hotel where lunch was being held, Clara was immediately overwhelmed by the grandeur of the place. Sparkling chandeliers, immaculate white tablecloths, uniformed waiters, and a breathtaking panoramic view of Manhattan. She felt her hands tremble slightly, but took a deep breath to calm herself. Richard was already waiting for her, seated at a table near the bay window. His impeccably tailored black suit and impassive expression seemed untouchable. But when their eyes met, something passed between them, a spark of interest, a mixture of curiosity and mutual respect. "Hello, Clara," he said in a calm but firm voice. "I'm glad you agreed to have lunch with me." Clara sat down, trying to appear confident, even though her heart was pounding. "Thank you, Mr. Langford. I really appreciate this opportunity." Over lunch, they chatted about this and that. Richard spoke of his business, his travels, and his philanthropic projects, while Clara listened attentively, asking intelligent and relevant questions. Every word, every gesture showed that she wasn't simply a young woman seeking a fortune. She had a sharp mind, a sensitivity that Richard was beginning to notice. It was when a waitress accidentally spilled a glass of water on Richard that Clara showed her true colors. Without hesitation, she stood up, grabbed a napkin, and helped quickly clean up the mess, making sure Richard remained spotless. This simple yet effective gesture captured his attention more deeply. "You are, more than I thought," Richard murmured, a fleeting smile playing on his lips. Clara didn't know how to respond, but inside, she felt a small victory. In this world of wealth and judgment, she had just proven her worth. At the end of lunch, Richard walked her to the door. As she was about to leave, he said to her with rare honesty, "Clara, I think you could be exactly what I need, but you'll have to be ready to fully enter this world." Clara nodded, feeling a mixture of fear and excitement. She knew her life had just changed drastically, but she didn't yet know how demanding this world would be, and how much she would change the life of a man who, until then, had seemed invincible. The next morning, Clara woke up in a temporary rented apartment on the Upper East Side. The pristine elegance of the place, the luxurious furnishings, and the panoramic view of Manhattan left her speechless. Everything was so different from her old life in Brooklyn, and for the first time, she fully felt the immensity of the world she was entering. Shortly after, Richard arrived to drive her to his office, a modern skyscraper in the heart of Manhattan. As she walked through the gigantic lobby, Clara felt the energy emanating from every corner: hurried employees, impeccably groomed assistants, back-to-back meetings, and an atmosphere of control and power where every gesture mattered. In Richard's office, a large conference table dominated the room. Files, screens, and documents were neatly arranged. It was there that Clara met Richard's key associates: Jonathan, his right-hand man, strict but fair; Melissa, the finance manager, insightful and direct; and Daniel, a bright but arrogant young talent, skeptical of Clara's presence. "Clara, this is the team," said Richard, introducing them. "You'll be working with them. I advise you to pay close attention and ask questions." Clara nodded, aware that every word, every movement would be observed. She knew she had to prove her worth, not only to Richard, but also to those who doubted her. The day was a series of unexpected challenges, complex meetings, quick decisions to be made, and technical discussions she had never encountered before. But Clara remained focused. She asked the right questions, offered thoughtful solutions, and, most importantly, demonstrated that she listened and understood more than expected. At one point, Daniel tried to throw her off balance by asking a trick question about a contract. Clara took a deep breath and answered calmly, with a precision that surprised everyone. Even Jonathan gave a slight, approving smile. Richard, silent but attentive, mentally noted her ability to remain composed under pressure. At the end of the day, as they were leaving the office, Richard stopped on the roof of the skyscraper to admire the sunset over Manhattan. The city sparkled like an ocean of light. "This world isn't easy, Clara," he said softly. "Here, everything hinges on precision, confidence, and the ability to see beyond appearances. You've made a good start today." Clara felt a mixture of pride and apprehension. She knew her life had changed, but she still didn't know how many challenges lay ahead. This world wasn't just about money and power; it was a world where loyalty, shrewdness, and courage defined those who succeeded. And Clara had just begun to show that she could hold her own in it. The weeks passed, and Clara was adapting better and better to this world of opulence and responsibility. Every morning, she arrived at the office with confidence, taking precise notes, asking relevant questions, and immersing herself in financial and strategic discussions with an acuity that surprised even the most skeptical partners. Yet, despite his apparent success, Clara noticed details that revealed the true Richard Langford. Behind his impeccable suits and unquestioned authority hid a man marked by loneliness and the wounds of the past. She saw him stay late in his office, alone, staring at old family photographs or rereading letters he never showed to anyone. She sometimes noticed his gaze drifting into space, a mixture of nostalgia and melancholy. One evening, after a long meeting, Richard invited Clara to dinner at his apartment. The city stretched out at their feet, illuminated like a carpet of stars. He spoke little, but his silences spoke volumes. Finally, he broke the ice. "Clara, there's something I've never told anyone," he began, his voice more fragile than she would have imagined. "My father, he was ruthless. And my mother, absent. I grew up always feeling alone, even when surrounded by people. That's why I became what you see." Clara listened attentively, feeling a deep empathy. She then understood that her place in his life was not only professional or social, she had the opportunity to be a true emotional support, to fill a void that no one had ever been able to see. Over the following weeks, she began to take initiatives, not only for business, but also to improve Richard's personal life. She discreetly organized certain meetings, prepared his files in advance, and sometimes, simply, was there to listen to his frustrations or doubts. One day, while they were working late on a crucial project, Richard looked at her with rare sincerity. "Clara, you have no idea how much your presence helps me." These simple words struck Clara to the core. She realized that she was no longer just the woman who married for money. She had become an ally, a partner, perhaps even the silent heroine who could change the life of a man everyone thought was invincible. For the first time, she felt that her marriage wasn't a survival strategy, but the beginning of a true, deep, and mutual connection. And deep down, she knew that this story had only just begun. Clara was beginning to feel more at ease in Richard's world, but this newfound comfort was quickly put to the test. One morning, she arrived at the office to find an unusual tension. Jonathan, Richard's trusted associate, was talking to him with a worried tone, and Melissa seemed visibly stressed. "Clara, can you come here for a moment?" asked Richard in a firm but calm voice. She approached and noticed a file on the desk marked "Urgent" in red letters. A major project of Richard's, an international acquisition, was in danger of falling through because of a business partner who refused to honor their commitments. If the deal failed, the financial losses would be enormous and Richard's reputation seriously damaged. Without hesitation, Clara got to work. She reread all the documents, discreetly contacted lawyers, researched the defaulting partner, and proposed several strategies to save the operation. Her efficiency impressed Jonathan and Melissa, who began to see her as much more than just a wife. She was a true asset. It was Richard, however, who was the most surprised. He had never imagined that someone outside his world could grasp the issues so quickly and react with such composure. During a late-night meeting, he told him, "Clara, you saved this project. I wouldn't have believed that a single person could." She simply smiled, trying to hide the pride that overwhelmed her. "I'm doing what I can, Richard." This crisis brought Clara and Richard closer together. He began to trust her with important decisions, and she, for her part, understood that her place was not only by his side as a wife, but also as a partner capable of influencing crucial choices. However, this success also attracted jealousy. Daniel, the arrogant young partner, no longer hid his skepticism. He gave her cold looks and made veiled comments during meetings, seeking to test her competence and patience. But Clara, now more self-assured, always responded calmly and intelligently, which only reinforced the quiet respect Richard held for her. At the end of the day, as they were leaving the office together, Richard stopped and placed his hand on Clara's shoulder. "I don't know how I would manage without you." These simple but sincere words deeply touched Clara. She understood that she had crossed a threshold. She was no longer just the young woman who had come for the riches, she had become an indispensable ally, capable of navigating the storms of this ruthless world. But deep down, she knew this was only the beginning. Richard's world was full of challenges and invisible enemies, and his real ordeal had yet to begin. A few weeks later, Clara felt that her role in Richard's life was becoming increasingly important. But what she didn't yet know was that the business world wasn't just about numbers and contracts, it was full of rivalries, manipulations, and invisible dangers. One morning, Richard received a call that made his usually impassive face pale. A powerful competitor, whom no one in the office dared name directly, had just launched a campaign to discredit one of the key companies in his empire. If this attack succeeded, millions would be lost and Richard's reputation, carefully built up over years, would be tarnished. Sensing the urgency of the situation, Clara immediately proposed a plan of action. She contacted influential journalists to correct the erroneous information, coordinated legal teams to prepare a swift legal response, and proposed communication strategies aimed at strengthening Richard's public image. "You're incredible, Clara," Richard murmured, watching her work. "I've never seen anyone handle a crisis with such composure and precision." However, this temporary victory was not without consequences. Daniel, the arrogant partner, continued to challenge her by questioning some of her decisions in front of the team, but each time Clara responded calmly, logically, and confidently. Even Jonathan and Melissa, usually reserved, began to show her a quiet but genuine respect. That evening, after an exhausting day, Richard invited Clara to dinner at his apartment. He seemed less distant than before, almost human, and spoke at length about his life, his doubts, and his fears. Clara listened attentively, realizing that the role she was playing went far beyond the business world. She was becoming the emotional support for the man she had married, the one who hid a profound loneliness behind his wealth. "Clara," he said finally, his voice trembling, "I don't think I've ever met anyone like you. You don't judge me, you help me be a better person." These words struck Clara to the heart. She understood that their relationship was not limited to marriage or business. She was becoming a force that could transform the life of a billionaire man, but also her own life. As she left the apartment that evening, she knew she had crossed a crucial threshold. She was no longer just a wife or a business ally. She had become a silent heroine, ready to face the challenges and invisible enemies that threatened not only Richard's empire, but also their shared future. Clara was beginning to feel firmly established in Richard's world. She knew the ins and outs of his business, understood his needs, and knew exactly how to act under pressure. But that night, she would discover that there were battles that neither money nor intelligence could solve, the ghosts of the past. It all began when a former business partner of Richard's burst into his office, demanding immediate payment for a debt that had gone unpaid for years. The cold and calculating man threatened to reveal compromising information that could ruin Richard's reputation. Clara understood at once that this conflict wasn't just about money, but about the past of the man she loved and was beginning to understand intimately. As Richard appeared flustered for the first time in a long time, Clara stepped in. She proposed a strategic plan, combining skillful negotiations and calculated legal threats, while simultaneously preparing evidence to counter any public attack. But she knew this wasn't just a professional battle. She had to protect the man behind the billionaire, the man who had been hurt and betrayed even before he met Clara. As the confrontation unfolded, Clara watched Richard gradually relax. He allowed her to make decisions, listen to her advice, and handle the most delicate aspects of the situation. For the first time, he allowed someone to genuinely share his burden. And Clara, feeling the weight of the trust he placed in her, realized she was no longer just his wife or ally. She had become his confidant, his shield against the ghosts of his past. Having successfully neutralized the threat from his former partner, Richard remained alone with Clara in his office, the silence heavy around them. He looked at her with unusual intensity and murmured, "Clara, I never thought someone could see through me and stay by my side. You changed my life." Clara felt a profound emotion wash over her. She understood that her marriage, often judged by the outside world as a marriage of convenience, had taken on a much greater significance. She had no longer simply entered Richard's life for his wealth. She had become a silent heroine, capable of protecting, supporting, and inspiring a man whom the world believed to be untouchable. And as she left the office that evening, she knew the trials were only just beginning. The ghosts of Richard's past, though weakened by her presence, would never completely disappear. But Clara was ready to stay by his side, ready to face every obstacle so that the man she loved could finally find peace and self-confidence. A few months after she began to fully immerse herself in Richard's life, Clara realized that her role went far beyond business and emotional support. This time, the threat was public. An influential tabloid had just published an article insinuating that Clara had married him solely for money, questioning her integrity and casting a shadow on Richard's reputation. Clara felt a surge of anger and a sense of injustice, but she knew that acting impulsively would be a mistake. She took a deep breath and approached the situation with her usual composure. She analyzed the article, noted the flaws in the accusations, and prepared a communication strategy aimed at setting the record straight without causing further scandal. Richard, usually impassive in the face of criticism, seemed deeply affected this time. Seeing Clara publicly attacked for an unjust reason awakened a rage in him that he could no longer control. But Clara calmly reminded him, "Richard, what the world thinks of us does not define our truth. We will manage this together, intelligently and strategically." She contacted trusted journalists, circulated evidence of her active involvement in the affairs, and arranged a series of public statements making it clear that she was not merely a self-serving wife, but a vital and capable supporter of Richard's empire. The media storm culminated when an exclusive interview aired, in which Richard spoke openly about Clara, her intelligence, and her crucial role in his projects. His words were powerful. He authoritatively put an end to the rumors, while showing the public that Clara was not just his wife, but his unsung heroine. Clara felt an immense sense of inner satisfaction. Not only had she protected her reputation, but she had also strengthened Richard's confidence in her. Their already strong bond transformed into a true alliance, where each knew they could rely on the other, even in the face of the harshest criticism. At the end of the day, when they were alone in the apartment, Richard took Clara's hand and said, his eyes shining with emotion, "Clara, you are more than a wife. You are my ally, my support, my hero. And I have never been prouder of you." Clara, touched by these words, understood that each ordeal, each attack, each challenge had only strengthened their bond. She now knew that her place by his side was not a coincidence, but the result of quiet courage and an intelligence that had transformed obstacles into opportunities. And as she watched Manhattan shimmer from the window, she knew more storms would come. But she was ready. Together, they could face the world. After weathering the media storm, Clara thought their lives would find some balance again. But sometimes, danger comes from those we believe to be close. A few weeks later, she discovered that a betrayal was brewing within Richard's inner circle. It all started when she noticed unusual behavior from Daniel, the arrogant business partner who had always shown signs of jealousy. He seemed more distant, more secretive, and spent long hours on the phone away from Richard's gaze. Clara, always attentive to detail, sensed that something was wrong. She decided to discreetly conduct her own investigation. By examining certain documents and analyzing the company's communication logs, she discovered that Daniel had attempted to negotiate with a competitor to sell sensitive information about Richard's business. This betrayal, had it succeeded, could have ruined years of work and jeopardized the empire they had built together. Clara confronted Daniel calmly but firmly. "I know what you're doing. And if you think I'll remain silent, you're mistaken." Caught off guard, Daniel tried to defend himself clumsily, but Clara had already prepared her plan. She alerted Richard and the rest of the trusted team, presenting the evidence in an organized and strategic manner. Together, they were able to neutralize the threat before it could cause irreparable damage. Richard, usually reserved, took Clara in his arms, a mixture of gratitude and admiration in his eyes. "Clara, you saved me. Again. You are my strength when I can't see the betrayal that surrounds me." Clara then understood that her role went far beyond emotional support or professional competence. She was becoming the guardian angel of an entire empire, capable of thwarting the most treacherous maneuvers. This ordeal brought Clara and Richard even closer. Their bond was no longer based solely on trust, but on respect and the certainty that, in the face of every adversity, they could count on each other. For Clara, this victory reinforced her conviction: no matter what challenges lay ahead, she would always be ready to face the storms, not for herself, but for the man she loved and for the empire they were building together. Having overcome betrayals and professional crises, Clara thought the worst was behind them. But life had a way of testing even the strongest bonds in the most intimate moments, where neither money nor strategy could suffice. One morning, Clara received a worrying call. Richard's mother, about whom she knew almost nothing, was coming to New York for an extended visit. The announcement created immediate tension. Richard, who had long suffered from his mother's absence and criticism, seemed nervous. Clara, understanding that this event risked reopening old wounds, decided to accompany him gently and strategically. When Richard's mother arrived, she wasted no time in passing harsh judgment on Clara. According to her, Clara was nothing more than a young woman attracted to her son's money and had no real value to her family. The words were cutting, humiliating, and designed to destabilize Clara. But Clara, strengthened by all the trials she had endured, remained calm. She responded with tact and intelligence, demonstrating not only her integrity but also her understanding of the world in which Richard moved. She supported Richard, eased tensions, and showed her stepmother that her position was not the result of wealth, but of her personal qualities and sincere devotion. Richard, observing how Clara handled the situation, felt a deep admiration and immense gratitude. For the first time, he saw her not only as his ally or business partner, but as the person capable of protecting his heart and personal life from the wounds of the past. That evening, when they were alone, Richard took Clara in his arms. "You have done more for me today than anyone ever has. You have saved my heart as much as my world." Clara felt an intense emotion overwhelm her. She understood that her role in his life was no longer solely professional or strategic. She had become his personal heroine, the woman capable of offering him security, confidence, and love. This ordeal reminded them that, even in a world of power and wealth, the most important battles are not always visible. Sometimes, it is the challenges of the heart, family, and intimacy that reveal true courage. And as they stood there, watching the city lit up by the night, Clara knew that, whatever happened, she would be ready to face every obstacle alongside Richard, because their bond had gone beyond money, power, and appearances to become something priceless. Months had passed, and Clara had repeatedly proven her worth, both in Richard's professional and personal life. But fate still had one final test in store, a simultaneous threat to Richard's empire and to their private lives. One morning, an ambitious rival launched a massive offensive to sabotage several of Richard's businesses, exploiting rumors and complex legal maneuvers. At the same time, personal information about Clara was leaked to certain influential circles, aiming to undermine her integrity and loyalty. This combined attack was designed to weaken them both publicly and emotionally. Far from being intimidated, Clara deployed all her intelligence and composure. She coordinated the legal teams, alerted trusted media outlets, and prepared a strategic plan to protect Richard's financial interests and reputation. She also handled the personal aspects delicately, neutralizing rumors with tact and grace. The battle lasted several days, demanding vigilance, energy, and perseverance. Every decision Clara and Richard made was crucial. But together, they formed an indestructible team. Clara now saw Richard not only as a husband, but as a partner who trusted her completely, and Richard saw in Clara an indispensable force, capable of turning every crisis into an opportunity. Finally, after an intense week, calm returned. The rival was neutralized, the rumors erased or denied, and their reputation stronger than ever. This victory marked a turning point. Clara was no longer seen simply as the wife of a billionaire, but as the true heroine who had protected both her empire and her heart. That evening, in the apartment overlooking Manhattan, Richard took Clara in his arms and said emotionally, "Clara, you have been my pillar, my guide, and my heroine. Without you, none of this would have been possible. You saved my world and my heart." Clara, moved, replied, "Richard, we went through all of this together. And I know that as long as we stay united, nothing can stop us." Their embrace sealed an unbreakable bond. This marriage, which the world had judged to be a marriage of convenience, had revealed a much deeper truth. Love, respect, and trust could transform even the most difficult trials into shared victories. And as they watched the lights of Manhattan twinkle endlessly, Clara knew that their story had just reached a crucial milestone. She was no longer just a wife, nor an ally, she had become the heroine of her own life, and Richard's, ready to face the future with courage, intelligence, and an invincible heart.